Good morning. We are live on the Falcons Podcast on YouTube. We're going to bring in our Facebook groups, Atlanta Falcons on SI and Scott Kennedy Sports. And then we're getting started. We got what I like to think of as a good show, but I'm biased, so I'm not sure my vote counts. But we're going to talk some stock reports today. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. My name is Scott Kennedy. I'll be your host. Over here on this side, over in Seattle, is Nick Kendall. So I'm in Atlanta. He's in Seattle. So we got you covered from coast to coast for your football coverage today. And then the Falcons are actually on their way to Miami for joint practices, but flights have started to get canceled, including Daniel Flicks, who is our beat writer, who is on his way there. And now he's on his way over to Flowery Branch instead. So we'll see what the Hurricanes decide to do with the Atlanta Falcons, because flights are starting to get canceled. So, Nick, how are you doing today?
I am doing okay. Since we've last spoken, there've been unfortunate events out here in my house. Dog got roughed up on a dog walk, and also everybody in our house tested positive for COVID on the same day. So I was positive Wednesday. I didn't test on Thursday technically, but feeling okay. I've had like a small cold. I mean, I guess we haven't been on many shows, but I've had kind of a small cold going on since
Wednesday you were a little.
Yeah, a little bit, but I had something worse early mid-July that I thought for sure was COVID. Much worse sore throat, way more snotty, fevery. Nope, not COVID. Tested a lot. Okay, whatever. This one, I don't even know if I would have known any different because I'm already tired. I've already been snotty, but my wife is pretty sick, and the baby they texted that we dropped him off. Natalie was positive. We dropped him off, and then later she's like, "Oh, I'm positive." We call him. Oh no, he's fine. No fever. About an hour later, come pick him up. He's 102.8. It's
and that's
unbelievable,
baby.
Yeah.
That's hot for anybody, let alone an infant. Yeah, I kind of joked when all that was going on. I'm like, I've got to have COVID. Nope, just old and tired, and I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
So, but we go live every Monday and Wednesday because we like having the conversation with y'all. So I want to say hello to some folks who jumped in here before we even got started, like Pamela. Great to see Pamela. Pamela John says, "Good morning, Scott, Nick, and everyone in the chat." That's all, y'all. John Harrell's here. He says, "Good morning, Scott and Nick family. Dealing with the hurricane this morning." Yeah, I believe it. It's messing with flight plans, and that may change up the Falcons' schedule some this week. I know it's already affected. Daniel was supposed to fly out, was leaving. His flight's already just been wiped off the board. It's just been canceled already. So the hurricane down in South Florida is going to change some Falcons plans. Stay tuned. FalconsSI.com to keep up with that. George says, George Patterson, good morning, Scott, Nick, and all Falcons fans. Do you see the Falcons running more of a hybrid 3-4 given all the defensive linemen they have? Thanks for all you do for all of us. George, I've said this a lot, and I think they did it last year out of necessity too, where they had one edge. They'd run three defensive linemen, then a stand-up edge with Bud Dupree, which was basically a four-man front. That's very, very similar to what they are doing now. That's what it looks like, and the guy who is taking Bud Dupree's place is James Smith-Williams, the import from Washington. I think I guess I better learn more, make sure I know a lot about him, because he looks like he's running with the ones right now because, well, spoiler report in our stock report is Arnold Ebiketie isn't doing a great job holding down the edge on the front four or a five if you go that direction. So, yes, I think, and I've said it all along, just based on the numbers, based on where the talent is on this team, if you don't have two really good edges, why am I going to force two really good edges on the field when I've got 8 defensive linemen? So I think we'll see. In Daniel's roster projections, he had them keeping three edges only and 9 defensive linemen. So yes, Nick, I think we're going to see a lot of big men on the field and then let the linebackers flow.
And we did see a little bit of that with the Rams with Raheem Morris. They weren't always dominant at edge, a little bit more hybrid players at a lot of those spots. Now, granted, when you have Aaron Donald, the math is different, of course. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we talked about it on this team. Edge is a position that, if we're having a early odds for the 2025 first round pick, we've said this for years now, Scott, but probably edge rusher is pretty darn high, especially with how the talent lines up next season with the need. But I digress. We'll see. I mean, it will be interesting in today's pass heavy league. Can you run more of a bare front? How clever can they get with their usage of pass rushers. I mean, it is a simulated pressure world these days. How does that impact the linebackers? Because I don't think you can go out there and play, 5 defensive linemen, right? What does the alignment look like elsewise? So we'll find out how innovative Lake and Morris can be with how they can generate pressure. Certainly, there are solutions there to get pressure with the packages you have to generate that and get matchups, but it's going to take some innovation on their side rather than just like we have the guys that we can line up and beat you with, specifically at edge.
It wouldn't totally surprise me based on the way things are looking right now if the 3 linebackers, Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, and Nate Landman, all got more snaps than a number 2 edge. Wouldn't surprise me a bit if that were to happen, because I think Caden Ellis is going to be and Troy Anderson are going to be moved around a lot, where they could line up off the edge, they could line up in the middle, they could line up all over the place, and frankly, those guys are better football players right now. Find a way to get your best 11 on the field.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last Wednesday. I always get this confused. You'll have to forgive me for this. It's the 4-3 underlook, which is essentially kind of a 3-4, but Seattle used it a lot during the Legion of Boom years, and you kind of had hybrid flex player in Bruce Irvin. So Michael Bennett was an edge, right? But he's like 270, 280, playing that.
There's your Zach Harrison type.
Exactly. So that kind of guy. And then Irvin, is he playing at the second level? Is he on the line of scrimmage? He's a little bit of that kind of chess piece. So maybe Ellis can be that. Maybe Anderson can be that as well. And then you have a little bit more classic linebackers with Wagner and Wright. Man, I know way too much Seahawks Legion of Boom defense. But that I think Cliff Averill maybe was the other line, more of a classic edge there. But you can do things. There are blueprints out there. Now, how does your front match your coverage? Right. That's always a big thing. It's not just the front. The front has to, and the run fits have to match what you're doing on the back end. But again, Morris has shown to be flexible and intelligent with meshing of schemes and innovative in that way during his time with the Rams. So we'll see. It definitely is a piece that is missing on this team, but there is no perfect roster, right? Everybody's always hunting for something. So hopefully the strength of the defensive line, options at linebacker give you avenues to generate pressure, set the edge as well, Scott. That's another big question here is like, okay, you're talking about Ellis or Anderson playing edge more on base packages. What does that look like? Because if that was me early on, I'm like audibling, we're running at him at the edge. Let's see if he can set an edge. Different game than obviously playing the second level, reading a defense versus the true setting of the edge.
I think it ends up being like a 4-3. Again, I've said it a zillion times. You're running more of a 4 down front with your 9 defensive linemen, and then your linebackers are roaming. You've got, it's normally 2, and then you're using those guys all over the place. So you're gonna have 1,200 pounds on the defensive line. They're setting the edges. So we'll see. Good question. I want to get to Coach here real quick. He says, good morning, Studs, win the day. Good morning to you as well. He's offering up the coffee emoji. I'll drink to that.
I'm more of a scud myself these days, so I appreciate that. But hope you're doing well, Coach. Always love you coming in and hanging out with us in the morning.
Yep. And again, thank you for the support, breaking the ice for us on Super Chats. Remember, the most direct way to support the show is through Super Chats on YouTube and stars on Facebook. Michael Ranquillo, the Ronk, is here. He's got his new Knicks jersey. I know he's fired up for the season. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Right back at you. Nicholas, the V5 says, good morning, Scott and Nick, and to the Atlanta fans. I know it's preseason this Friday, but I'm still tuning in. Excited for the season for our Dirty Birds. Yeah, there's enough change out there. And frankly, we should absolutely see Michael Penix Jr., right? I mean, we're not going to see Kirk Cousins until week 1, but we should see Michael Penix Jr. play a lot, I would hope.
I would imagine so. I mean, there's no reason to totally protect him, right? Unless he's out there completely not ready with the playbook. But I'd imagine
season.
Yeah, that's true. But you still, I mean, you know how these coaches can be sometimes. But probably at least a quarter and a half of Penix, right? Getting out there. Hopefully we'll get some highlights from the arm. I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but let's see the flashes, right? I want to see the hose. Let's see some tight window throws, opposite hash mark kind of stuff.
Yeah, he definitely has the arm, and there were some changes. We had talked about from the beginning that I just don't see why Taylor Heineke makes this team, why he'd want to make this team. I want to see him be at least a number 2 somewhere else. He'd probably want to be at least a number 2 somewhere else. And it's not necessarily a money issue anymore because he already took his pay cut. But nobody wants, except the Heinekes, nobody wants Taylor Heineke taking number 2 reps away from Michael Penix, who could be the future of this team, where Taylor Heineke's not. So we want Michael Penix taking reps with number 2s. We want him taking every single possible snap. I don't want Heineke taking snaps away from him. And when they went 11 on 11s with live periods, Heineke was watching. And his quote, and it's on the front page, falconsi.com, says, the writing's kind of on the wall. He says, I kind of see, what's happening. And hopefully, again, they made a change. John Paddock was cut because we thought, okay, who are they going to keep as number 3? Because Heineke should be a number 2 somewhere. It's not going to be Paddock. They brought in Nathan Rourke to take his spot. So there still are 4 quarterbacks on the team. And for my money, I find a way to have Heineke play somewhere else, even if it's with a pick swap somewhere. I want Heineke to be a number 2 somewhere, not in Atlanta.
Yeah, hopefully you can find that. And they're just rotating MAC quarterbacks, right? I think Rourke was maybe at Miami, Ohio, and Paddock was, I don't remember where he was before Illinois because he transferred to Illinois. But yeah, I mean, we love some action over here.
I'm Central Michigan,
maybe. But yeah, no, I think Ball State maybe actually. But yeah, we got King Atlanta supporter coming in here with X and MLK says, "Can't wait to see my team win their first Super Bowl." Heck, man, dream big, right? It's the off season. We haven't seen anything happen yet. Why not dream big? Obviously, in the NFC, how many hurdles do you have at quarterback? All you got to do really is, the Eagles are a challenge, of course. We'll see about the Cowboys. Lord knows what's going to happen with the Niners. Those are good teams, but is Purdy that guy to that level? I don't know. But Atlanta's going to be a fun team to watch this year. I don't know about Super Bowl, but I think they're going to be some fireworks for sure. I think it's going to be a fun offense.
Yeah, and Friday, 7 o'clock at Miami. We'll see. At Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens. Have a game on Friday at 7 o'clock. We'll see if that still goes off as planned. It should probably be okay, I would think. It's just the joint practices could be in trouble. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of us in Atlanta that can't wait to see them win their first Super Bowl. Played in 2, and both hurt badly for different reasons. So good morning. Jamal D in here says good morning. Good morning to you as well. Mitch, he's here. He says, what's up, fellas? Can't wait to hear how we look. I'm pumped for the season. Ready for the season too. John Harrell, he says, how's grading the pass rushers and linebackers looking? I think the linebackers are looking really good. I think the defensive line is looking even better. As far as the defensive line, the big guys, the 275 plus, I think the edge rushers are not as good as we were hoping. On the stock up, stock down, Arnold Ebiketie is one of the guys that's stock down. He's not running with the first teams in a one-man edge look. He's running with the second teams and doing might end up being designated pass rusher because he's having trouble in run support. So be out in first down, which is okay. But we were hoping he takes that step where he's out there every day. So if they pass the ball on first down, you still have your best pass rusher out there. But if he is a designated pass rusher and he still gets more time out there and still gets 10 sacks, we're okay with that. I just was kind of hoping for more right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is waiting to see until actual game action. And of course, you have Cousins, who's been always pretty good at avoiding sacks. On the strip sacks, we'll keep an eye on, but pretty good at helping his offensive line. And then Penix, despite being showing to be not a very mobile quarterback at Washington, obviously he had the runs and everything, and we'll see how that translates to the NFL level versus what was just asked of him in that Washington offense. But both quarterbacks pretty good at helping the offensive line and avoiding sacks. Maybe that's limiting the edge rushers as well. We'll find out as we have some more game-like situations. But, I mean, as soon as the draft is over, we were talking about, edge is a spot, wait and see, cornerback 2, wait and see, you have options there. But just because you have options, each of them is a dice roll, doesn't mean you're going to roll 6s every time. So we're wait and see on edge.
Yeah, Penix is super fast. I mean, he's a 4.5 guy. He can fly.
Shocking because he doesn't.
But he's not a runner.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll run to throw, but he doesn't. What he have like 100 and something yards last year, total rushing last year at Washington,
and he was like crazy low statistics on pass attempts outside of the pocket. Like
he's a pocket passer who's fast.
Yeah.
So we'll see. If you don't keep your lane integrity, and it's 3rd and 15, and everybody goes long, and they go wide and open up the middle, he can get 15 in a hurry. That's just not necessarily his game right now. And, part of that might be the last 2 years, Nick, might be how he stayed healthy too. Was he more of a runner early in his career? I don't know. I could probably look it up pretty quick and see. It's like, what were his rushing attempts like, per game before he started getting hurt all the time? And now it's like, listen, with that arm of yours, stay in the pocket, dude. We don't need you out there running when you got $1 million left arm. Let's see here. Archangel, he says, nice, see that shiny forehead. Yeah, I think my hair is long enough. I could probably cover it up and put the drapes down if I needed to. Another day. What up, Nick? Nick at night, or shall I say Nick in the morning? Definitely in the morning. It might still be dark there, though. Actually, this time of year, it's probably bright outside.
No, it's crazy how fast we go from peak sun to like things starting getting darker. So I don't think it's sunrise here just yet out in Seattle. I mean, because we're already August, right? So our sunrise is right now, 5:53. It's happening right this second. So
there you go.
Scott knew.
Edward Brown says, good morning, Falcons family. Good morning to you as well. Michael's here. Good to see you. Mr. Shonoff says, good morning, guys. Enjoy your podcast. Looking forward to the season. Well, we're certainly glad to have you with us. And we got football. And going back to the stock up, stock down we're talking about, and one of Daniel's interesting, and I'll drop the link in here in a minute. One of the interesting one was he kind of combined a group together for stock down, and he said second-year defenders. The guys that finished the season pretty strong last year that we were hoping to take that next step. But there's, Nick, you say all the time, growth isn't linear. You don't, just because you went on a line, you were improving throughout the season, doesn't mean you keep improving through year 2. Now, theoretically, if you do make that jump, the biggest jump, I think, is between year 1 and year 2. But they're kind of taking some things slow. Clark Phillips, Zach Harrison, DeMarco Helms are on the stock down, because those are guys that all could have thought of as first-team defensive players. None of them are running with the first team right now, Nick.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. An indictment on. I mean, at some point, right? You got to like point the finger at the personnel guys. Picking them up. Granted, you might give them an excuse saying it is the new scheme, right? You didn't draft them for this regime, but you're talking about a lot of decent investments there. Now, nothing like too crazy premium, but we'll see. The one you're still holding out hope for is Zach Harrison, right? Second-year defender, just the tools, how he flashed last season. What we're talking about with the lack of edge rushers, Harrison's type should play a role in that, but we'll see. It is a question mark. This could be a team where his defense is a little wishy-washy. We talked about, I think last episode or Monday, how likely they are to repeat last season's statistical output. And we both said if they finish somewhere between 20 and 15, it's pretty good considering the talent level and investment across that defense. So we'll see. I don't expect them to be a top 10 defense this year. And right now sounds questionable, but I mean, I'm ranting right now. The final thing though is, we've said it every time, we're zero-sum game right now, right? Like, is it the defense is struggling, or is it the offense looks great? You won't really know until you start playing variety opponents, different opponents over a broader and broader sample size.
Yeah, Leon Mapstone, good morning, and I agree. I say that all the time. It's like you show me here's a pass rush win of Arnold Ebiketie coming off the edge. Man, he looked great. I'm like, okay, who was the tackle? I want to know the other side. Who is he going against? Is this a great rep, or is this a bad rep? One or the other. We're not sure until we start seeing until you start going against other players. And really, you don't know. I don't know that you ever really know. I mean, you look at the way that teams beat other teams all throughout the season, but we'll get a better idea this week if the combined practices go off in Miami. Weather hoping, we're not sure there. And then as the preseason starts, there's a lot of young players we will get to see. There's a lot of young players who are interested. And Daniel said, to be fair on his Clark Phillips, he says Clark Phillips has been really good during the preseason, made a ton of plays. They just have Mike Hughes in front of him right now. Okay, that's fine. I'll if Clark Phillips is really good and he's still running the twos, that means Mike Hughes is playing really well too. And that answers one of those questions we have, which is cornerback 2. We might have a couple of good options there. Zach Harrison, I think he's put on about 20 pounds, Nick. So that's it's less than 10% of his total body weight, but it's still a significant amount of weight when you're talking 20 pounds going from 270 to 290. And, kind of learning to move inside a little bit more. I thought he did a good job of acclimating to that last season, but he may be doing it a little bit differently this year, because last year it was pretty obvious to me he's not a stand-up edge. He just doesn't have the burst. And then once he put his hand down into the rubber pellets, he started playing better as the season went on.
Yeah. Again, you can have a lot of variety of different types of body types, pass rushers, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully he can be a big part of the rotation, because he is a talented player. Granted, the finishing, the ability, the agility, question marks there, but we'll see. With a rotation, you can find some niche pieces there. Chris Walker, good morning. Scott, Nick, everyone. Good to see you. Always appreciate Chris coming in. And hopefully I keep muting. I have a little bit of a cough coming up here and there, so hopefully I haven't burst anyone's eardrums with that. I checked to make sure it was actually this mic that I'm muting instead of whatever the heck it was last Wednesday.
Yeah, normally I hear that, but I keep the volume low so we don't get an echo, because I don't wear what do you call those things? Earphones.
Yep.
Because I don't really need earphones. If you keep your volume low on your speakers, you don't need to wear earphones.
Yep.
But then I couldn't tell if how good your microphone was or not. So part of that's my fault too. I know. Mark Angel says, just get me to the playoffs, man. That's all I'm looking for. Thomas Sills, good morning. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. 100 Realist has a birthday coming up as we get into fall. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick. I may get to go to my first Falcons games this season. Well, cool. Hopefully that place is loud when it's rocking, despite what who was it? Amon-Ra St. Brown had to say about the 2021 game against a 2-11 team the day after Christmas, and 2 teams not making the playoffs and still having 50% more fans in the stadium than what the Detroit Lions were putting in there, talking about how bad Atlanta fans were. I've said it for years. Atlanta fans are awesome. Atlanta franchises have been some of the worst in their respective sports. That's not our fault. It's not our fault. Atlanta Falcons are the 5th worst franchise all time in winning percentage.
Yeah,
I'd say we're doing pretty good. You've gone 7 straight seasons with a losing record, and you sold out your season ticket packages for this year. What's wrong? You tell me again what's wrong with the Atlanta sports fan other than the Atlanta sports.
Yeah. Also, the level of quarterback play you've had makes it a pretty miserable product to watch as of late. And also, Atlanta is a pretty transient city these days, right, Scott?
Is.
I mean,
and that's part of it. And the other part of it, it's not even these days. The back in the 80s, when the entire Midwest was moving to Cobb County, my college rivalries in elementary school with all my friends were Big Ten. I mean, my granddad went to Ohio State. My dad went to Penn State. All my friends were Michigan, Wisconsin. I mean, that was how it was. And but there's a lot. That was what was kind of cool about Atlanta United. Nobody moved down here from Chicago and says, "Oh man, we're 3rd generation Chicago Fire fans." No, you go to an Atlanta United match and you see only Atlanta United. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a lot of, you get the transient nature of Atlanta, couple it with bad sports. I mean, the Hawks have never been to an NBA championship. And then the Braves in the 80s and the Falcons in the 80s, it was bad. It was bad. But tell me that the teams aren't supported. You're fair weather fans. I'm like, dude, everybody's fair weather when you're consistently freaking bad. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, now being a father myself, right? Talking about zero sum and, slices of the pie. Am I going to go the 26th to a terrible team to watch 2 bad teams play, or am I going to hang out with my family? God bless you. Well, I'll watch the game. You bet your darn, you know what? I'll watch the game, but am I going to
Well, we
go?
didn't get see the blackout rules. We didn't get to watch in the 80s. We didn't get to watch the home games.
They're available. That's all I'll say. I don't want to get
not in the 80s. They weren't.
Oh, not in the 80s. Okay, yeah, you're right.
No, we'd watch. Back me up on this. We'd watch either the Dallas Cowboys or the Oakland Raiders and the Miami Dolphins. Those three teams were always on in Atlanta, and we'd get to watch. They'd have to go on the road because of the blackouts.
That's dumb. Talk about hurting your product.
Whatever. Go look at the records and tell me that's the Atlanta Falcons fans' fault. Come on.
Yeah.
With the Smith family, give me a break. Keith and Ellen Johnson coming in supporting the team. Team Nick and Scott certainly appreciate it. Team Falcons Podcast. Want to come through and say hello to some folks here. Let me see. Stephen B says, are the Falcons the only team to draft a first-round left-handed quarterback twice? Maybe. I can't think of how. I don't know how many first-round lefties there are. I'll have to look that up because Jay says that's an interesting question. And James Duraco, he says that Penix was a running quarterback at Indiana, strictly a running QB. One read and run, then he started getting hurt. Washington turned it into a thrower. Yeah, he's got a 9,500 mile an hour fastball. Let him turn that thing loose. Because, at Washington, he didn't run, but he had his receiving core at Washington was damned good. We joke, Nick, sometimes about Joe Burrows or the Tuas of the world. They get to their first NFL camp and they have a downgrade at wide receiver. I don't think that's the case here with Michael Penix. But throwing to the number twos might not be as good as throwing to the number ones at Washington last year with the bunch they had.
Yeah, I mean, will be interesting to follow for sure. I did want to talk a little bit more about the stock here from our guy Daniel Flick. I'm a little bit bummed because somebody that I liked in college, talking about Big Ten earlier, I see him on the stock down, and that's Rondale Moore. We've talked a bit, big question marks for this Falcons team. Obviously, Kirk Cousins' health. What does that look like with everything there? But edge rusher, cornerback 2, and then wide receiver 2. And there's a lot of options there for wide receiver 2. Obviously, Kyle Pitts has been getting a lot of buzz. He's going to be your essentially, heck, he might even end up your wide receiver 1 when it all comes down to it. But Rondale Moore here listed on the stock down. I'm disappointed, Scott. Talented player at Purdue, kind of gadgety. But sometimes those guys that are, it'll work for this one guy, right? He's going to be the next Tyreek Hill. Well, there's only one freaking Tyreek Hill, guys. But to see Rondale Moore listed here with battling Ray McLeod, not a strong endorsement for our guy Rondale Moore. Not a strong endorsement.
Yeah, and like he said, he got some praise for getting better, but as Daniel said, it still hasn't been good enough to beat out Ray for that slot receiver position. Darnell Mooney will be the number 2, and I guess he's looked really strong. I think for the stock report, I just dropped it in the chat, everybody. It's really well written, a lot of great information in there. We posted it yesterday morning. I think the one that should encourage all of us to see in there was one of the first guys he mentioned was Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts stock up. Well, we've been hearing that since Raheem Morris took over. We know he's got the ability. He's got the ability, all the ability in the world. We know he battled quarterback problems in year 2. Then he got hurt. We know he battled quarterback problems and he was still nagging from injury in year 3. This year he's healthy. This year he shouldn't have quarterback problems. And the reviews, they're just raving about 23-year-old Kyle Pitts.
Yep. Scott, I don't remember how much you were on the side of this, but I remember last year it might have been the offseason talking about, well, what could you get in a Kyle Pitts trade? What would that look like? He hasn't really lived up to it so far. We're already entering year 3 and you have all these other guys behind him that have been killing it. And I'm like, he is still so young. He's been coming off an injury. His quarterback play has been horrific. And you're going to take such a loss in terms of investment if you moved him right now. Like, what are you talking about? A 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick? It's even if he doesn't live up to it in the end, I think it'd be worth the risk to just hold on and wait and be patient there because the talent level and everything is so high. And I'm not saying that you said it. I just know there was conversation.
No, I was on that level, Nick, until I was educated on the 5th round options.
Yeah.
The 5th year options for 1st round picks.
Oh yeah.
When again, I thought it would be tied into your first 4 years are tied into where you got drafted, but your fifth isn't. That doesn't make any sense to me. I just assumed that it would be based on your draft slot. And when you're drafted fourth overall, your fifth year option was going to be super, super high. But no, at $10 million, $11 million, roll the dice, man. You're keeping Kyle Pitts for 2 years for sure.
Now, the one interesting wild card here is, could this go to like an arbitration process where he is like, actually, look at my reps. I'm a wide receiver.
Yeah, it's done, though. It's done. It's already been picked up.
Yeah. We'll see, especially for the tag, how things will change there.
Yeah, that's different, though. If they were to go tag on that, and when they go for a second contract,
yeah,
they might have some different types of negotiations. But they also might have him block more and play more tight end this year. More tight end this year. Bucks, Rays, Bolts. It says, how's the weather over here? The storm's coming, guys. I think it's supposed to be okay here. I did want to try and get some fertilizer and was checking for rain. And we're not getting the bands of rain up here in Atlanta. But again, y'all, if you missed the top of the show, they're canceling flights down to South Florida where the Falcons were supposed to be headed for joint practices with the Miami Dolphins. We'll see how that affects the schedule this week. I'll be surprised if it doesn't affect the schedule in some way, shape, or form, because, again, they're canceling flights down into Miami today, and they're supposed to start practice down there tomorrow. So we'll see on that one. Let me see here. Chris Walker on this. He says, Chris is, I don't think he's quite as old as I am, but he lived through the dark days of the Rankin Smith family ownership. He says, I'm glad Arthur Blank is willing to re-sign good players before they hit free agency. That didn't happen with the Smith family when they owned the team. We might have been more competitive than if we weren't so cheap. Yeah, it was bad, y'all. I mean, Arthur Blank has his faults. One of them is loyalty to a fault, which I think he's corrected a little bit over the last couple of years, or else Arthur Smith would have gotten a fourth year. But loyalty to a fault compared to I don't give a shite, I'll take it, because the Rankin Smiths use the Atlanta Falcons as a piggy bank. It wasn't if you look up, Arthur Blank probably bought the team for like $200 million, and they're probably worth $7 or $8 billion now. It wasn't quite the cash cow that it is these days when they were running it, but it was a family owned thing. They weren't independently wealthy, and they didn't pay the players signing bonuses, et cetera, and the team suffered on that one for sure. It's we have our problems with ownership, we all will, but it's so much better than it could be and was.
Yeah, it's always a little bit of a double-edged sword for me, because it's like, okay, do you want like the actual like super elite billionaires to own these teams and like treat them like shiny new things, like, oh, look at this yacht I bought. I also bought an NFL team. Fun. Like, do they actually care about that, or is it just something to show off with their friends? Whereas sometimes you have the smaller markets where it is actually, this is how we make money. We have to hold on to every freaking penny and charge and put the costs on the consumer and the taxpayers, blah, blah, blah. So good to see the Smiths, really actually care about winning. The Blanks, pardon me, the Arthur Blank and company, but hopefully that results in a winning product. Doesn't always. He does seem to be a good owner in that front. The players and the coaches and everybody do enjoy Arthur Blank, and he doesn't seem to be too overstepping with his power. He does let the football people make football decisions.
He did okay. They bought him for $550 million. So the Smiths did okay, but now the team would probably sell in the neighborhood of $6 to $7 billion. So $20, it's the safest investment in the world, because it's a closed system of billionaire boys club protected by the government monopoly. So it is the safest thing in the world. Roderick says, what did you make of the new kickoff? I haven't seen it. Still haven't seen it. We were podcasting while the game was on, so I didn't watch it. Looked messy to me. I expect it to look a little messy. So I watched one, and it was pretty simple. Kick the ball, run to the 25, get tackled. That's what I saw.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see a larger percentage of the plays, what it looks like. I mean, Sean Payton talked about potentially the rules changing a little bit too, still, like, the implementation of it. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to follow. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit of yakety sax playing on the first 6 weeks of the season from teams.
Bucks, Rays, Bolts. Scott, how does the NFC South play out before preseason? All right. How does it sound? Falcons 11-6. I'll round up because I think 10-7, 11-6. Bucks 9-8, and in for a wild card. We'll see how that shakes out. The Saints 7-10, maybe 8-9, right in there. I'd say 7.5. I don't know what their over/under is, but I feel like it should be about 7.5. And then 4-13 with a little bit of improvement for the Panthers.
7.5 for the Saints.
Yeah,
Good
that
call.
feels right. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm pretty good at gambling when I don't put my own money down. So, because I'll put stuff in there, whatever I say, it's usually pretty close. And when it's not, I'll be like, here's your pick right here. Like if I'm off by, if I said 7.5 and it's 4.5, I'm like, here's where you bet. And we do that every week. It's easier in college because the spreads are so crazy. I'm like, well, they're going to beat this team by 21. Wait, the line's 8. Bet the farm. There's usually one of those a week that I like. So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
I like all
that's
those.
where I go. What do you think? Bucks, Rays, Bulls. Does that sound about fair? 10-7, 9-8, 8-9, 4-13. I think that's right in the neighborhood. 1, 2, 3. That's probably where the odds makers are pretty close on that too. Brian Dunn, look at you coming in with the orange super chat. Thank you, my friend. It certainly helps keep the lights on, the forehead nice and shiny. Pay for a haircut. I'm definitely going to get this week because I'm going to get out the shears if I don't get to the freaking barber this week and get it done. Brad Clark says Cousins throwing for over 5,000 yards this year. In my opinion, MVP candidate. Whew. I tell you what, if he goes for 5,000, what's that, about 300 per? 300 times 17 would be 5,100 yards. I'll go, let's say, if I go 250 per, and hopefully he's playing 17 games. You go 250, not one, Scott. I can't seem to hit the button on here, times 17. That'd be 4,250. 4,250. So I'll set the over-under, if healthy, because that's the big one on that, is at 4,300 yards, I think, is about where he comes in. Because this team's still going to run the ball, and it's still a new system, et cetera, et cetera. 4,300 yards for Kirk Cousins in 2024. What do you think?
That's pretty good. Of course, when they do big lines like that, they always set it a little. We've talked about this before, Scott. They always bake in, like, what if he misses 2 games? Subtract 2 games from the total. So, because you'll way hit the under if you miss a little bit of time.
Right.
So, assuming a full healthy slate is always dangerous. As far as MVP candidate, I have a hard time seeing Cousins win MVP this season, but I'd be curious what the odds are on comeback player of the year. Obviously, coming off the injury, changing teams, he could have a very good season. I don't expect this Falcons defense to be incredible, and I expect a lot of positive situations for Cousins and maybe even some, easy yards, dumping it off to the running backs as well. Some, easy added passing touchdowns and passing yards with Robinson and Algier. So I don't know about MVP, but I'd be curious what the comeback player of the year stats are and just who else is out there that could qualify for that.
Yeah, I like it. I think this team should be balanced enough that I don't know what did Purdy throw. We know they're balanced. What did he throw for last year? So if I look at NFL stats from last season, we look at nobody hit 5,000 last year. So the passing yards was 4,600, 4,575, 4,516, 4,300 was number 4. 4,280 was Brock Purdy, number 5. So if I said 4,250 would be 250 per, 260 per. Mahomes was 4,200. Jordan Love was 4,159. CJ Stroud was 41. So yeah, 5,000 is going to be tough. That's a lot. But 4,250, I like that. 4,300 is right in that range. Would be good.
I mean, it'd be hard.
And the important one here, as Chris says, get the ball in the freaking end zone. We had it with Julio forever. 1,800 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kyle Pitts, what's he have? 4 touchdowns in his career. Drake London, 1,800 yards, 3 touchdowns. We got to get the ball in the end zone here in Atlanta. Chris is right on this one. Yeah,
well, better quarterback play will help. So much of the red zone stuff is the intricacy of the design. Smith was good between 20s, not great in the end zone. Again, quarterback, coach, chicken or egg. But with Cousins there, it'll be great. We'll see about Robinson. How can he coordinate some layups? That was one thing last season watching the Broncos that I really appreciated from Sean Payton, because there were some freaking layups for touchdowns. Russell Wilson had incredible red zone efficiency, but like it's pretty obvious when you have a wide receiver matched up against a linebacker with 6 feet of space. It's just some of the play calls and designs in the red zone specifically to free guys up were easy. So will we see that from Robinson? Unknown for now with the system and how good he can be as a play caller in the red zone.
Go ahead and hit this one real quick. I've got some numbers if you're interested, Nick. Matt Judon. I don't know a ton about him, honestly. And I guess
he's been a really good pass rusher for the Patriots. He's been their number one edge for a couple years now. I mean, I know he's older, so I wouldn't be looking to trade for him and then give him a contract with a lot of guaranteed money on the back end, but maybe, a restructure, something like that. I mean, there's a reason Patriots are paying other people on the defensive line right now, and Judon's been out here in space. But he's been really good. I love his aesthetic too. He wears like the red longs. I think he wears like 9 in red long sleeves too. So he pops as an edge rusher. When you play NCAA football, it's like, okay, single digit guy with all the swag. That's kind of how Judon stands out. He's been good for them. He'd be easily your number one. I don't think he's probably worth more than third or fourth round pick, though, at his age, especially if it's coming with a new contract on top of it. So are the Patriots going to be inclined to move him? Maybe he's somebody to keep an eye on with the trade deadline. I'm not expecting the Patriots to be very good this season, and pass rusher is a position that in theory you can acquire at the trade deadline, and it's not going to be super difficult to implement into your system. So Judon is of interest. Of course, I mean, we're still on. Has anything been resolved with Reddick either out there? I mean, there's still some pass rushers available. And if you're struggling,
Reddick's still out there, and Judon's on the last year of his contract, but he still has a pretty good size dead cap because he's got a void year, so they're pushing that. I hate void years.
Me too.
I just, I don't like void years. But his base salary is 6.5. So you'd have to clear up a little bit of money. That shouldn't be a problem if you needed to. So they would get some relief if they were to trade him because his base salary is so high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be. It's worth monitoring. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you have to go get him, but edge is a really valuable spot. And if you're going to be playing with a lead, you need some closers out there. I don't think it can always be schemed up. You can do a little bit of that, but you need to have some one-on-one winners out there. So worth monitoring. If Ebiketie struggles, if Harrison's not taking that step, if William Smith is your best edge rusher, there's reason to maybe be a little bit aggressive there.
Yeah, at the trade deadline, look for those guys. Just we don't have to have those guys right before the season. If you're doing well and if you feel like we're one player away here, maybe you make a move. Jacob Coons, apologies. He says, "Good morning, everyone." Coming with a super chat. Thank you, sir. He says, random question. Did we ever get an answer why Bijan played only 2 snaps at one game last season? Still bugging me. Well, I'll tell you what, if I'm not mistaken, the Falcons were fined for manipulating the injury reports and not reporting that he was injured. And then he gets a carry like on the last carry of the game. I mean, you're right. None of it made sense. They did get in trouble for not reporting the injury correctly, that he was banged up, but then they used him. Why use him 2 snaps at all? And then it was, the whole thing was a bad look. Because, do you remember Arthur Smith was so flippant? If you guys actually knew how this stuff worked, there's nothing to it. Arthur Smith has been fined by the NFL. If you guys actually knew. Oh, thanks, coach. You arrogant. You didn't make a lot of friends in Atlanta with the media, that's for sure. I mean, he's like, I think people liked him when the cameras were off and not so much when the camera was on. It was kind of the exact opposite because, the beat writers seemed to like him okay, but he was curmudgeon-y. And as Cadillac says, Arthur Smith has a grudge against fantasy football. That might be just it. So on that note, I think we are just about to get out of here. Nick, Stock Report. What are you looking for first preseason game? Thinking of the 2, think that most of the 2s will play. What are you looking for this week? You're muted. You're still muted. So I'll tell you what I'm looking for.
Here I am.
There we go. He's back.
I don't know. Darn cough. At least I was muted rather than last time. But it's got to be Michael Penix, right? I mean, it's got to be Michael Penix. You know, he's the future franchise. It's great because it's not this like, oh my God, if he doesn't look good right now, we're screwed. It can be a little bit of like, okay, well, he's got, you know, there's no rush right now. Let's see the flashes of the arm. Let's see him operate the offense. Let's see him audible based on the right look. Now, granted, you're going to see a lot of vanilla coverages and stuff on the back end. So I will say, don't get too high or too low, right? This is not real football.
It's the season for overreactions.
I mean, if he has a good time, there's going to be people in the chat calling for him. They'll cut Cousins, trade him now. We got to put Penix in there. He's the future. The future's now. He's going to be playing some really vanilla coverages out there against number 2s, number 3s, guys who are going to be selling insurance or working for Enterprise. You know, just no offense if you do that, but that's, you know, like the NCAA post pathway, a lot of those guys. But that's the not too high or too low, but it's got to be Penix. Excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, I agree. I immediately start thinking defense, you know, for some reason. So I'm like, all right, I want to see Zach Harrison out there. I want to see the rookies out there. I want to see Dorless. I want to see Trice. So I'm looking forward to seeing. We should see a bunch of those guys playing. And yes, I do expect to see Michael Penix. And yes, we do want to see the rookie out there. And the depth at the receiver is better. Let's say Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney don't play at all. Okay, let's see Ray. Let's see Casey Washington. Let's see Rondale Moore. There's depth on this team that watching the second teamers play can be fun. It could be fun for a change. Not Major League. Who are these guys? You know. Yeah. So on that note, we are going to get out of here. I want to say thank you very much to our Super Chat superstars. Coach came in and kicked us off this morning. Jacob came in late. Brian Dunn came in with the big orange. And Keith was over there for us on stars. So thank you very much, guys. You help keep the lights on and keep us going. We will be back on Wednesday, and we'll see if they've changed up practices at all. So hopefully we've got some joint practice information flowing that we can talk about. But it won't surprise me if things get jacked up a little bit because Mother Nature says, yeah, you're not flying into a hurricane. On that note, Nick and I are going to talk Mile High Huddle here. We're going to go do Broncos for breakfast here in a few minutes if you want to join us and keep the conversation going. Otherwise, we will see you on Wednesday. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Peace.